Hey gang, it's Kwame here with SquareSkills. This is a little, I guess, tutorial guide, maybe kind of like a theory video on, or building design video rather than necessarily a particular tutorial. Anyways, I got two sections here that essentially look identical. One is your standard setup. It's the second one down here. We've got some others we'll talk about in a second. There's the block. As you can see, we centered it nicely in the grid. On my version, it takes the full width, but still looks the same. Let's exit and let's take a look at why. So we're full screen here. And I'm going to, sorry, I forgot to save the CSS. That's why it flickered. Looks good. Now look at the difference. As we go to smaller browser widths, and let's make this taller just so that you can see a little bit better. The default section, the bottom one, personally, I think that's too constrained. Here, my top section's a lot more responsive. Larger screens, obviously, they're both kind of fine. Smaller screens, though, you can see, for me at least, this is a more normal sort of reading width. I know here it's fine because it's not that much smaller and we've got these nice three lines and things. But I find, especially as we really get close to that mobile breakthrough point, for me, this top version is better. And this isn't obviously a be-all and end-all solution. This is just one approach I use where if I have content that I want to retain its width, I don't want this happening. Where because we have empty grid columns either side, it's shrinking and it's getting kind of trapped. And then when we get to mobile, we're fine. And you can see another example down here where I have this kind of split section thing. Top one is my version. Bottom one is the standard version. Probably should have reduced the spacing between the sections a bit so you could see both at the same time. But here's the bottom, resizing. And you can see here, as we get to quite thin screens, for me, this is a little bit like uncomfortably narrow, especially when we get just before the break point. So you can see what's happening here. Mine, that margin is seemingly being adjusted. And yeah, so it's a personal preference which you choose, but I'll just talk you through what I've done anyway. So the two versions I've done. First, I've picked some variables. In my kind of like boilerplate CSS that I put in pretty much every site, I have these three variables, large, medium, and small for my content. I've tweaked them just for this specific example, but normally they're like 1080, 720, 480 pixels. You do whatever you want. It's just for easier reuse. And then I have these mixins. And what they basically say is wherever I put this mixin, whatever block I attach it to, the block content will max its width at a certain size, and then it'll have auto margins, so it'll be centered. And that's just my personal approach. And so let's look at the example. I've got on this section, again, thanks to Will Myers actually for the block identifier plugin. So I've labeled this one width 2. Don't ask me about my naming. I did them in reverse order. And literally all this is, I've just put the mixin in the curly brackets, and I've said all the blocks in that, because there's only one, their content will be limited to medium, so 930 pixels. I think that's what the one below was. And yeah, it'll always be that maximum width, depending on the screen size, and it will allow, it'll allow resizing. And that lets me just set the block width to be full grid width. And it's really easy for me to manage. I could always do things like I've done on the second one, where let's copy and paste it. I've then targeted block content within, and I've said margin left 0, and that just left aligns it on all screens, which again can be really useful because, let me just do this quickly. What can I spell? Okay. For example, if I wanted a section where on larger screens I wanted a bit of space on one side like this, but then I want it to responsively scale nicely like this without leaving a massive gap here on smaller screens. That's what I would do. I haven't yet thought of or needed to really think of an easier way of doing this other than just doing SQS block content and remove one of the margins. But there you go. So that's really useful. Super simple, especially when you are centering content. There we go. And then for sections like this, it's basically the same thing as I just did, just with the margin left. However, I used one of the new Squarespace blocks attributes, and I just said, actually, I don't need this nth of type. I've just said within this section, so with one section, any text blocks should have the block small mixin, which means they're set to that width. And then I've been lazy and I've just nested it, and I've just said, and also they should have a margin left on their SQS, but on their content. And you can kind of see that in action. If I bust open the inspector, you can see there's the block, and then there's the size of the content alongside the margin. I personally find this is really useful, and it can be a fantastic time saver when you're working with Fluid Engine and you want to, you just want to easily be able to manage these widths and things and make them a little bit more responsive when the Fluid Engine grid isn't as useful for you as it could be. I hope this is great. If anyone uses this and wants to tag me in the site so I can take a look at it, or comes up with any other variations, I mean, there are a lot more fun things you can do with this, especially if you know how Fluid Engine works, if you know how Squarespace works and CSS works. And I'm sure as Squarespace continues to make updates, it'll get more flexible. As always, if this was useful and you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link below. Or if you want to ask a question, ask for a tutorial, ask for a video, just drop me a message. Or if you want to hop on a project. Hope this was useful.